There it is. Splendiferous London. Lit bridges girded over the serpentine Thames. Jeweled honeycomb of hope and joys and love, misery and power. This century's high plateau, vulnerable before the plagues and epidemics that will surely come. Flight from Vienna, 16 February 2013. Hello, my name is Chris Agee. I'm a poet, essayist, photographer, and editor. My third collection of poems, Next to Nothing, appeared in 2009 and was shortlisted in Britain for the Ted Hughes Award for New Work in Poetry. I recently edited Balkan Essays, the 6th volume of Hubert Butler's essays. My fourth collection, from which I'll be reading now, is entitled Blue Sambar Moon, and it appeared in late 2018. I'm also editor of Irish Pages, Ireland's largest literary journal, and the Irish Pages Press. For 40 years, I've lived in Belfast, and I now divide my time between Ireland, of course, Scotland, and Croatia. The book is, both books, the third and the fourth collection, are about a death in the family, the death of our daughter in 2001. Next to Nothing records the immediate aftermath, 6 or 7 years. And this book might be called The Aftermath of the Aftermath, about turning some corners, about finding, perhaps you could say, a new life in the shadow of death. So I'm actually going to read first one poem from the third collection, the one shortlisted for the Ted Hughes Prize. Mirage. The road on Millet. It might almost make me a believer. I mean the dirt road rising, dipping, and twisting along the small lake, glistening with shadows of chalk, jade, and greengage, glimpsed through the undergrowth and Aleppo pines, whose shadows ink its rough camber. For 2 summers, it's happened towards 4, or thereabouts. Shimmering time when the last stragglers, honeyed with memory, a day's small wonders, wend their way dreamily to the waiting ferry. There's a whiff, perhaps, of brine off the breezy tidal channel, and the woods still sing with hoarse rattles in an endless racket of cricketchur. And near the portable WC, where the stairs rise steeply to the right, into the cool fragrance of the pines, a memory of both of you, hand in hand, heading towards the first step, shimmers into feeling so strongly it's as if I'm seeing a moment's mirage with a second sight. Then back to nothing, the beautiful world whose condition is doubt, like a physicist of memorials, leaving a crop circle dew-dropped in the field of the present. The absence of God is God enough. This is a poem set in a restaurant that, there's a series of restaurants on the Neretva River, which is a river that runs from Bosnia into Croatia and down into the Adriatic, not too far from Dubrovnik. And the restaurants along the Neretva are very famous for their views and their food. Extremely beautiful river, which is turquoise because of the karst or limestone that surrounds the river. Neretva Restaurant, in memory of Miriam. I'd forgotten that half an hour or so, until a few days before our bus swung in again to the sloping roadside restaurant, perched on an overlook high above the dazzling Neretva threaded below, the white conical minarets and strip fields, the Yugoslav pylons of beautiful Jablanica. A pumped and cobblestone grill was bubbling from top to bottom through a series of gutters, water wheels, pipes, and cement fish tanks where trout were penned in dappled beauty. 8 lamp spits filled the air with wood smoke and its smell. I remember a quick lunch and nothing of Miriam, but love and presence. At the back, in the woods below the dining deck, a breath of presence, ash flicker and maple leaf flutter in the high heat of Central Europe. I stood perspirant with Jacob and watched far below a brown, pebbled submarine sandbar like a trout's speckled belly in the crock of a wooded bend. Depths turquoise, shallows green, under another day's dazzling blue river. Now Donegal, New Year's Eve, between 2009 and 2010. Moonrise, New Year's Eve. The moon rose behind us. We turned to face its full, large dial, low over bloody foreland. It cast its wavering, phenomenological foil over the bay's Whale Road and Seal Road. A wisp of cloud twisted a half veil over its shadowy seas. A scudding bank first topped it like a matador's hat, then blocked it with backlit darkness. Spindrift's suds fled the rising tide line in a tumbleweed of moments, whitening the night. Glad your old dad's still here? Give me a kiss. It's good being together, huh? That was always, of course, the real reason for our time in Donegal. Now I'll turn to the section which is entitled Blue Sandbar Moon, a micro-epic. And I'll read, I think, 12 or 13 little small poems. These poems all have captions. The captions are very much part of the poem. Sometimes I'll read the captions, sometimes I won't. They're rather like captions in paintings. They give a context and a kind of time signature. Or you could liken them to some novelists like W.G. Sebald who put photographs through their book. The relation of the photographs is not always entirely clear to the text, but they give a kind of atmospheric to the novel. Likewise, the appearance of captions solve a lot of technical problems. I don't have to say where and when I am. They normally indicate the place and the date. Deep in lush Longford, the smell of slurry, birdsong and cow parsley on stilled verges, old domain walls ivy with ivy. I piss through a rusted curvilinear gate towards countryscapes under noctilucent clouds, the canary in the climate's coal mine. Through the Adriatic. Finally it came, the flutter flash from the fig to the laurel, when over morning coffee, the golden oriole unburdened me of the fear, of the pain that is always in new life. The caption with this poem is Departures, Sarajevo Airport, 24 October 2011. The last morning after the last night, the crescent moon like Islam's slender cusp by a lobe of dark, waxing towards plenitude in our new lives. I was afraid of the cuts we made to the almond the day before, because it is easier to live in the old growth of dead shade than face the heartwood's fresh cross-cuts and cleared spaces of new vistas, like a moth still stuck in the shadows of a dawn window. The crescent moon and morning star clear over antennae and chimneys, the lit windows of close hallways, and the big birch windy, and some other pinprick of hope strung spangling to the acute angle of planets and tenement. Events steam, the building's human breath, in the blue first light rising to a first day in the promised land. Another Scott's poem, which I consider quite an ecological poem in some way, the way that the brain is complicated, ecologies, natural worlds are complicated, and there's some kind of interaction between how we understand the world and the world's actions and evolutionary developments, and so forth. It's in Glasgow, this poem. The small moment, extremely beautiful, like the magpie in the ancient birch, flitting down in sunshine and light green, to another waving bough, like a thought in with its swaying whole. Back to the Adriatic. It appears in many guises and places, the extreme beauty of the moon, like in sea phosphorescence of silver plate, filled from a full one, that first time on the water taxi, plowing the light. Or tonight, 17 years on, from the ferry, a sliver of crescent of dark honeyed amber, setting into dark headland, like a bookend to all that time passed in between, in the second life of the mind's amber. So as you can gather, I have some experience of the Balkans. I was actually in the siege of Sarajevo right at the end, and as a result, I started to attend the war crimes tribunals in The Hague for many weeks. I imagined myself like a Darwin studying the finches, but rather than studying finches, I was studying the human psyche for some kind of lessons, which I didn't really get, actually. But this poem, rather than the essay intended, this poem and several other poems in the book came rather than the essay intended. I felt very depleted, of course, emotionally, after all this testimony about destruction of human feeling, destruction of human life, as if this too is part of evolution. So the caption reads, "After the War Crimes Tribunals, The Hague, 17 July 2013. I watched the bats tumbling and the morning star, maybe, over a garden in The Hague. One house lit in hope, the tree's top shifting and swaying, ebbing and rising, ducking and fainting, like one night's sorrows, without catharsis, remedy, or acquittal in the natural history of feeling's destruction." Back to the Adriatic, where I have a house, where we have a house. The world welcomes me back, warm sun on my brow, like an old friend at the open casement, swung open to the eternal blue, where once I saw and suffered in the night coolth. True apocalypse, next to the same almond below, now stumped and weathered in the black earth, wetted and fresh with the tears of night rain. So this is one of my most highly political poems. The thing about politics is you can always just say the politics, but you have to feel it. And there's relatively few poets who actually feel politics. It might be a nice lifestyle choice, it might be something that pleases you, but you've really got to have feeling about politics, like Brecht, or some of the famous political poets. They always do something that's not just politics, it's usually emotion. So this is a highly political poem. The caption is Belfast to Glasgow, 22nd, 25th February 2014. And because I was working as a writer in residence and doing a lot of other projects in Glasgow, I was flying all the time between the two. And I was flying EasyJet. And I love this name, EasyJet, because it suggests the armchair political commentator after the political commentary. Yellow cat's cradles of the old gantries in the dawn's sulphury blue, a twinkling EasyJet preparing to land behind a row of poplars silhouetted as if a besom broom blown out of the east from the Ukrainian drama where history has hardly ended. And Davos, be aware and be apprised, with your Faustus of capital running amok and wrecking its havoc, the mass ethicalized here too may yet arise like a Luther or Brecht to defenestrate bankers and banksters and oligarchs in a collective catharsis to roll the tumbril for your shameless self-indulgences. Says at least this easy passenger. Beautiful primrose. This is back to Ireland. Beautiful primrose, still so delicate after all this time, the last one planted on your sick day, the first one up in sunny February, on a mossy bed under the privet hedge, a twinkle with waterlight between two petals in its bowl of being. For though out with you're dead, you still exist for me, like that glint of light in with my innermost place. Another Belfast poem. I found a snail crossing the sidewalk like the ones in Dalmatia, yellowy greeny, whorled with bands of dark brown, heading for its nirvana of hedge. And so saved it, of course, from its dangerous course. The way I failed to save you, that cloudy, clement, breezy, bright March day when we went AWOL on the towpath, unalert to alertness, and your final course was settled. The caption is Mourning Miriam's Death Day, Cross Parade, Belfast, 23 April 2014. Couple more. Okay, so three more, and then the piece of prose. So 2015 was a big year politically. Things really changed. And the reason was, of course, the Syrian exodus. So I'm going to read two poems dealing with the Exodus. The first poem you recognize from the caption who is being referred to, Death of Alan Kurdi, photographed near Bodrum in the Aegean, 3-5 September 2015. A little boy on the beach. His little legs dangling at the stooped crux of a Turk's arms. Someone had tied his shoes that morning. He was ready to go, with only love. He knew not where. Now lost to existence, even the shite sun saw life and death, the one who didn't make it, as we did and still do this day. Extraordinary that refugees who are heading to Germany, refugees to Germany, the great nation of the creation of refugees 75 years ago during the Second World War. The whole process reversed, in a sense. So the note at the bottom is, time, quote, time and patience bring the snail to Jerusalem. Proverb from the Irish during the Syrian Exodus, Belfast, 3-5 September 2015. Germany, a new Jerusalem, born of defeat and its east, astonishing Zabaldian swerve along a long march motorway, whilst the old honored word Israel is broken in two, into proper and greater. For the snail of the good knows no borders, goes where it will on the uncovenanted single terrace of history. So I climb a lot in the Balkans, and this is in the Velebit, which is the mountain range that runs along the Adriatic, the last of the micropoems that I'm reading. 3 deer at dusk, a doe, her fawns, stood off and stock still in headlights in high forest, and 3 of us, a mother maybe, father and son, as if equals at a distance, sharing the magical moment, pausing us all together in strangeness. So now I will simply read a couple pages of poetic prose, Parable of a Summer. Another call, email, task, list, purchase, repair, reconstruction, focus, meeting, movement. Another thing. Above all in all this, covering all this, another thing to do. What might it mean in an ontological sense? It is, I'd say, Roth's dream of endlessness, the assumption on some primordial psychological level, owing to each past day's renewal of present, that we will never end. At some point, it all seems to say, we will reach the paradisical terminus of completion, the plenitude or platitude of everything done. But for most of us, I dare say, looking back, it will never have happened. Paradise not lost but unmaterialized, more of an elysium of shadowy tasks in the foreground of missed existence. More Microsoft Office than the word of life's real presence. Sisyphus in the half-life of his daily daily decline. Up above us, like some call of techno-bioluminescence we've lately developed, the jellyfish of new communication floats in the ether of near space, moored to its satellites. It is clear that a large proportion of humanity already cannot elude it for more than a few days or contemplate living without it. Bird watching is subtle, one of the eye's subtle arts. An art, too, of the ear, and extremely ancient, the stuff of augury and omen. It is strange to think that these creatures might be the shrunken dwarves of pterodactyls and dinosaurial color. You can see, though, why many will see nothing in it. Its narrow visual range, its endless repetitions. A few swallows pirouetting like jets through the morning yard, their blue-black backs, their white bellies. The secretive flash of the golden oriole. An owl taking wing out of the almonds against the last light of the valley. Flocks of little brown birds, unidentified, seeking gleanings at rake dawn on our old gravelly road between parched grasses, disturbed into flight by an opened door. The strange grace of the house bats tumbling headlong through the same yard as soon as dark falls. Up from Africa in April, the hoarse serenade of nightingales, trilling and squeaking in the crisp and starry night. Could there really be much in it? But it teaches you to attend, to wait on the small thing and the little surprise, to abandon the pseudo-cosmic disease for the narrow reaches of a microcosmos, to plumb intently, as with augury or Newton, just one moment's becoming on the ground of physical being, where that small surprise can take wing into the imaginations of one's full attention. And on almost every occasion of such intention, there are surprises. Like one time when a small bird with rufous back, buff belly, and black mask alighted in sunshine on the almond sapling in front of the terrace. The species is common, if still unidentified, but I had never quite noticed the marvel of its glossy back, its rufous sheen. Till that moment on the morning in question. I might not have stepped one leg up on the wall of the terrace and looked in that direction. I might have been thinking of emails. Updike has spoken of the increasing dephysicalization of contemporary culture. Is this then now the one globalized dominant ontology, ideology? If so, in this sense, for me in any event, a rufous gloss must always trump or out-trump any email. People in the village are always giving each other little gifts. It is a kind of barter of goodwill and neighborly feeling. One morning, I saw an old neighbor's wife meet Yasinka, a younger neighbor, on the crumbling tarmac that runs by our house through weathered stone walls. The Journeveau church clock was just striking its 9 chimes. After the loud and public greetings that are typical, she immediately gave Yasinka a plastic bag of tomatoes from her garden. Whether the tomatoes were intended for Yasinka or whether they were to be unloaded on the first friend or neighbor she encountered on the road was unclear. It always is. Another morning, our neighbor Petar, who seldom visits, suddenly appeared round the corner of the house from the tarmac lane. The terrace was still in shade, and I was taking an early breakfast alone. He was shirtless and in sandals, with a straw hat like Huck Finn's. He brought me a bag of 2 cucumbers and 4 tomatoes, of the heart-shaped local variety, always very good. Perhaps it was also an occasion to remark on my 3 haystacks, that after my last misjudgment with petrol in May, scorching the cypress, they should not be burnt until October. The island's summer tinderbox of scrub forest, parched vegetation, and grassy olive groves was a perennial threat. His gift lifted my spirits at the start of another hot day. It was like a cool mental dew in the optimism of the morning. Its common quality over time across village space partly informs and partly inspired this prose. A black ant scampers across the creamy white of a limestone jam. Dalmatian, light and dark. Everything is interesting. Later, not far from the stone threshold, another ant, or maybe the same one, hauls its awn of straw with Sisyphean purpose towards the Eocene's version of our techno hive. Many thanks for listening. If you're interested in this book, Blue Sambar Moon, it can be ordered at www.irishpages.org or found in bookshops